Powerhouse Women, sharing their insights, sharing their inspiration, sharing their story and their journey. So, welcome to the Powerhouse Woman Show. We're so glad you're joining us. I'm your host, Monica Pierre. We're also going live inside our Powerhouse Women Live Facebook group. So we say hello to you, welcome, along with all of you on YouTube as well. Thank you for joining us today. It's been exceeding my expectations of what this show would be about, and the people who said yes to watching, who said yes to being a guest on the show. So, my next guest, we're so delighted that she has joined us. It's she's not Monica Pierre, she's the one and only Tina Shay. Good morning, Tina. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I know it's been a long day. Hello.
Hello, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. We're talking today on the launch of the show. How does a woman at the height of her professional success decide to either pivot, to shift, to do what's been on her mind and in her heart for a long time, or see another way, an innovative way to do it? You have been an educator, you're well respected, you're an advocate for K 12 education, you are a former high school math teacher. And prior to COVID-19, you were all over this country, this USA, traveling and training hundreds of teachers using technology to enhance their instruction each year. And in 2014, you made a powerhouse decision to start your own thing, the Learning Laboratory in New Orleans. And we'll talk about that as well. I've been asking my guests and letting them know that I have a surprise for them, that I went and I asked someone who might know you very, very well to tell us what makes you a powerhouse woman. And apparently, Tina Shay, you do have a superpower. And there's one person, a parent, said her teaching is experimental and it is alive. The kids are always excited to learn with her because her approach is old school, yet with a modern twist. She incorporates the latest technology, but she also taps into some of the best ways to keep kids learning from the past. You are a powerhouse woman, a powerhouse educator.
Wow.
What do you think about that? Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate you. And one of the things that you stress, in fact, when you go on your site, you talk about being the lead learner. Why is learning so important? You know, you're a math teacher, former math teacher, you know Google and all that good stuff. But why do you continue to learn?
Well, as an educator, as an advocate for education, I think it's very important for me to have a commitment to lifelong learning. How can I communicate to students? How can I talk to teachers that I'm trying to get to understand what I'm teaching if I'm not always learning new ways to reach them? I think also, particularly because I focus so much on technology, that's one of my areas of expertise. Technology is always changing, right? So there's no way that I can make a career out of training people on how to use technology if I'm not constantly, trying to learn more about what's coming up, what's new, what's becoming obsolete, because obsolescence is something that we're always dealing with when we're working with technology. So, as a technology person, it's something that I'm committed to, and then it's just something that I love to do. I love learning, and that's what made me, in part, become an educator. It's also what gives me the passion for what I do, is that I just love learning new things. I love learning a new hobby. I taught myself how to knit. It's just anything that I can learn how to do, I get excited about it.
Wow, that is amazing. So as a powerhouse woman and powerhouse women, do you find that it's important that regardless of your industry, regardless of your brand, regardless of what your gift is, that you find ways to make it a lifelong commitment to learn?
Absolutely, absolutely. In terms of just maintaining relevance, right? And regardless of what field you're in, things are changing. And again, going back to technology, we are in the technological age. And I think, post COVID, that's been emphasized more than anything else. And so, for example, there was a time where you could make a career out of being a travel agent. And while I'm sure there are still travel agents, there are probably more travel agents who have seen their business shift because of sites like Expedia and Travelocity, or just the fact that people can Google where they want to go. And so just in response to a rapidly changing world, it's important for us to be mindful of, how are we going to adapt and how are we going to change so that whatever it is that we have to offer is still going to be, cutting edge and still in demand for our consumers.
In 2014, you started the Learning Laboratory New Orleans. But prior to that, you were faced with a decision. Extremely popular high school math teacher. You were working in the administration office of the school district, but there was something more for you. What was that process like to decide that you would leave what I'm now calling the intersection of what is familiar to what's next? How did you decide that it was time to do it? And what back and forth happened in your mind and in your spirit?
Wow. That's a deep question. What I have to say is that, there are certain things that you do in your life where if you're waiting for everything to line up perfectly, it'll never happen, right? At some point, you just have to, grab your stuff and go, right? And I think for me, back in 2014, when I decided to start the lab, I was in a position where I felt like, I was ready to make a change. I had already left the classroom, as you mentioned. I was already working in an administrative capacity. And I knew that being like a school or district administrator was not the end game for me. I had already, had lots of experience with training teachers and, kind of helping teachers get better at what they do. But there was still a part of me that said, well, if you're training teachers, how are you still going to maintain a connection with students? Because I didn't want to be, one of those people who's coming in and telling people how to do their job when I haven't done it. And so the lab is a place where I can be innovative and I can try new things with students. And so, it kind of connects back to what what that parent said to you, is that I try to, try new things with the kids and things that may not necessarily fit in a traditional school environment. Because when you're in schools, you can be innovative to a point, but there's still lots of boundaries. There are lots of limitations, even if it's just, the amount of time that you have with kids. So having the lab means that it's kind of like I have an incubator for all of these great ideas and things that I can do with students, and then bring those findings back to educators and have an even bigger impact.
Well, you are resonating. This is the first interview, the live virtual one-on-one, where we're actually going to bring in some comments. We have Tony who's watching. Thank you, Tony. And we also have Michelle, who really is connecting with this conversation. So thank you all for being with us as well. We're talking to Tinashe, and we're talking about the journey, the process of making the decision. But let's be real, because one of the things we're going to do on this show is we're not sugarcoating anything. We're going to tell the truth. Any lessons learned about the decision? As my mother would say, you had a good job. But anytime, was there a moment when you thought, maybe this was not the right move to go for it, to pack my things and go?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are, even right up to this moment, I have times where I'm thinking, did I make the right decision? Shouldn't I just be doing a 9 to 5? It would be so much more predictable. And, of course I have those moments. Again, going back to technology, I always say to teachers that I train that we are preparing students for a world that does not yet exist. We don't know, like, let's say you're teaching an 8th grader, right? We don't know if these kids are going to be flying around like the Jetsons or what by the time they, become our age. And so I kind of apply that same philosophy to business, right? And so something that I've had to get really comfortable with is uncertainty, right? Uncertainty in every aspect of the word. So the easiest example I can think of are my summer camps. Those are the flagship programs of the lab. We've been doing Genius Camp, our primary program, for 6 years now. And this year we actually had to go virtual, so there's that. But I can remember some years with Genius Camp just really having a hard time trying to figure out, are we going to have Genius Camp this year? I don't know about my numbers. And what I got really good at is kind of creating like a contingency plan. So it was kind of like, okay, if we have 10 campers this summer, then this is what we can do. This is what our budget looks like. If we have 20, if we have 50, and so basically, I think that one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is that, there is a lot of uncertainty in, being an entrepreneur and having your own business. But that doesn't mean that you can't plan. It just means that you may have 3 plans or 5 plans. You may have a plan that's triggered under certain circumstances. But the worst thing you can do is kind of be the ostrich, right? And putting your head down in the sand and just hoping for the best. In that situation, you're going to be in trouble. So something that I've learned is just to plan, plan, plan. I love a spreadsheet. I used to have a spreadsheet.
Yes.
So I love using spreadsheets to make plans and try to make as many different plans as possible. So regardless of what happens, I can be at least somewhat prepared.
Wow, what a fast-paced, far-reaching interview. But before we go, I'm asking you, if you can, to give us a definition of what a powerhouse woman is.
Well, you asked me this question, and I'm looking at my phone right now because I texted it to you. You asked me why I was a powerhouse woman, which I have to say was a kind of intimidating question, but I gave it some thought, and this is what I came up with. I said, I'm a powerhouse woman because I'm committed to lifelong learning. I believe that my life has a divine purpose, and my responsibility is to step into that purpose and be an example to those who have the privilege. I have the privilege to influence. My calling is to be an educator and an advocate for K-12 education. My superpower is my ability to connect with and inspire my students, children, and adults.
Wow, that is a powerful, powerful definition. So I want to thank you, first of all, for being with us, Tinashe Blanchet. We're not just former colleagues and workers. So we've stayed in touch all these years, and I've always been impressed and also inspired by you hanging in there and really being a powerhouse woman, because no one guaranteed us what? A rose garden. Nobody promised that at all.
Nobody said it would be easy.
No. We want people to know how to get in touch with you. The Learning Laboratory New Orleans, that's Learn Lab, LRN, labnola.org. We also mentioned that she is the principal, Tinashe is the principal of her own firm, Blanchet and Associates. You're wearing 2 entrepreneurial hats here. So this is how people can get in touch with you. And I'm so grateful that you could spend some time with us here on the Powerhouse Woman Show. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and sharing what you have experienced.
Thank you for having me. Is it possible? I have one more thing that I wanted to share before we part.
Yes.
You had asked me about my decision-making process. And so something that I thought about is when it comes to opportunities, and at this point, a lot of opportunities are coming my way. I have 3 questions that I ask myself. The first one is, am I passionate about it? Does this connect to what I'm passionate about? Secondly, does this connect to my purpose, right? And thirdly, can I make a plan for this? How does this fit into my plan? And how can I plan to make sure that I'm successful? So I wanted to make sure that I kind of left folks with that thought, because that's really helped me along the way as well.
Always the educator. Always the educator. Thank you, Tinashe.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, I want to let everyone know we're going to continue our day-long list of wonderful interviews. Coming up at 5 o'clock Central will be Ann Duplessis. She is a banking executive with Liberty Bank. She's also a former state senator and also an education advocate. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back at 5 o'clock. Talk to you then.